Hello and welcome to Dark Age Growing. Today, I'm going to show you how to dehydrate your greens and store them. The first thing you need to do when you're getting ready to dehydrate your greens is take them off the center rib, then break them into or pull them apart into smaller pieces and lay them in single layers on the trays. As you're filling the oven, the dehydrator, I leave the top one empty and set the dehydrator to between 100 and 105 degrees. It'll dehydrate at this temperature for between 6 and 12 hours, depending on what greens and how large of chunks you have. And make sure that you reinstall the door or the top on your dehydrator. I ended up leaving this kale in here for 12 hours, but I think it was probably done closer to 8. It's extra crispy and great for long-term storage. Make sure that it has a good crunch sound before you put it away. Anything less than that, and it probably has too much moisture to be able to store long-term. Something I really like about the trays in the Excalibur brand dehydrator is that they're flexible. And so I can use it to funnel all the flakes down into the bags. In other types of dehydrators, you may have to pick the flakes off the trays individually. Now that you have your greens all dehydrated, they're ready to store. I chose to break mine up into small flakes before I put them into their jar. So, there's several ways of doing it. I'm having a little bit of fun here, breaking it by hand inside the bag. Some people would probably use a food processor, dice it up as small as you want. At the end, I'll show you a batch that I'd powdered and put away. It's what I have left from the batch that I put away last year. So, right here, just massage it, break it up in smaller and smaller pieces. The smaller the pieces, the more you can fit into a jar. All of this ends up being less than half a jar. If you have one, a canning funnel makes this job really easy. Also, turning the bag so that you have the rim inside out also makes it easier to pour through instead of it getting caught up on the zipper. Clean jars and clean lids are especially important because they're not getting heated as they would in a canning process. So I make sure not to touch the insides of my jar at any time during the process. At this point, you could use a oxygen absorber inside the jar with the dehydrated greens, or you can use one of these lovely tools that hook into the food sealer. It hooks up using the accessory port to a jar sealer. Make sure that you have the right size for the size jar that you're using. Put it onto the top of your jar, and it will suck out all of the air from the jar, making a nice tight seal. Disconnect the hose to release the pressure and the vacuum on the outside of the jar, and then carefully work this off of your jar so that you don't accidentally take your lid off with it. I've done that before. It wasn't fun. I had to do it again and suck the air out of the whole thing again. So that was just me checking to make sure that the seal was good, that it wasn't coming off. I put the lid, or the ring, onto the lid at this point. Doesn't have to be really tight, because that's not what's holding it closed. And just write down on the lid what it is and what date you sealed it up. Greens stored like this are good for at least a year. And it's best to go ahead and write the name of it and the date of it on the jar, because even though you think you'll remember, after just a little while, there's a pretty good chance you won't. So give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know if you want more videos like this in the future. This right here is what's left of a batch that I processed down into a powder last year. As you can see, the color's still pretty good, and it had about the same amount in it as this one, but because it's processed down to a finer level, it takes up way less space.